Good evening, dear viewers. You are now watching today's special weather news bulletin. Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering the peak of September, a time traditionally considered the busiest and most complex period of the year for meteorology. The Atlantic hurricane season usually becomes highly active, while on U.S. soil, the weather often brings sharp contrasts. What makes this year especially remarkable is the number of unusual developments taking place. On one hand, the United States is preparing for a dangerous heat wave with temperatures soaring well above normal, reaching as high as 98 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 to 38 degrees Celsius, across the Midwest and the Great Lakes. On the other hand, severe thunderstorms, accompanied by large hail, damaging winds, and even isolated tornadoes, are returning to the Central Plains. Meanwhile, the Atlantic Ocean, after weeks of quiet, is finally waking up, with several tropical waves now organizing, and at least one system is very likely to develop into Tropical Storm Gabrielle in the coming week. The overall weather picture is therefore becoming highly complex, hot, stormy, and flood-prone, making forecasting and preparedness more urgent than ever. U.S. mainland overview. Let us begin with the situation across the United States. In the Midwest and Great Lakes region, the heat wave is quickly becoming the main headline. Actual observed temperatures over recent days have ranged from 89 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 to 34 degrees Celsius. But forecasts suggest that values will climb even higher, with many areas potentially reaching the 100 degrees Fahrenheit mark, 37 to 38 degrees Celsius. Such heat is exceptionally unusual for September, a month when conditions typically start to ease as autumn approaches. Factoring in humidity, the heat index may exceed 105 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius, raising the risk of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and severe health impacts for residents. This oppressive heat is not confined to southern states such as Texas or Arkansas but will extend much farther north, covering Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, and even Minnesota. The heat wave is expected to persist at least through the end of next week, with several states possibly breaking September temperature records. According to the U.S. Climate Prediction Center, nearly the entire nation between September 21st and 25th is forecast to experience above-average heat, with forecast maps shaded almost entirely in orange and red, a clear signal of widespread excessive temperatures. Central Plains severe weather. While the Midwest bakes under extreme heat, the Central Plains are bracing for a completely different scenario, the return of severe thunderstorms. The main trigger is a series of troughs moving eastward from the Rocky Mountains, sparking strong convective activity. Over recent days, severe storms have already produced large hail and damaging winds in eastern Colorado and western Kansas. Tonight and over the next few days, the risk zone expands across South Dakota, Nebraska, northeast Colorado, and western Kansas. The U.S. Storm Prediction Center has issued alerts for the likelihood of severe hail, damaging wind gusts, and even isolated tornadoes. In particular, when storms interact with advancing cold boundaries, small but intense landspout tornadoes could form. Once organized, storm clusters may merge into mesoscale complexes, tracking along major interstate corridors and spreading wind damage risk over a wide area. Forecast models highlight late afternoon through evening as the most dangerous timeframe, especially across South Dakota and Nebraska, with storms drifting toward Omaha overnight. East Coast weather. Turning to the East Coast, conditions appear relatively dry overall, but there are still concerns offshore. A non-tropical low is developing near the coasts of North Carolina and Virginia, bringing scattered showers and wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour along barrier islands. While this system is unlikely to transition into a tropical cyclone due to disruptive upper-level winds, waterspouts offshore or small tornadoes near the coast remain possible. Additionally, large waves and higher than normal tides could cause localized flooding in low-lying coastal cities. Authorities advise residents to limit marine activities over the next several days. Western U.S. Meanwhile, the western United States is experiencing a cooler pattern thanks to a Pacific trough. Alongside the cooler air, however, Heavy rainfall is impacting California, Oregon, and Washington. While this precipitation is beneficial for replenishing reservoirs and drought relief, it also raises the risk of flash flooding and landslides in steep terrain. The Rocky Mountains and surrounding states, including Utah and Colorado, are also seeing orographic thunderstorms, with dry gusty winds sparking new wildfire concerns across already parched landscapes. Atlantic tropical activity. Beyond the mainland, attention shifts back to the Atlantic. A strong tropical wave has just emerged from the coast of Africa, moving westward into the main development region, MDR. Both the GFS and European forecast models indicate that this wave could consolidate into Tropical Storm Gabrielle within the next several days. Its projected path initially bends northward into the open Atlantic, which would likely make it a so-called fish storm, with no land impacts. However, confidence is still low, and further monitoring is required. A second tropical wave follows closely behind, expected to approach the Caribbean later this month. If environmental conditions become favorable, this wave could pose a greater threat to Caribbean islands or parts of Central America. Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. Currently, the Caribbean Sea and Gulf of Mexico remain relatively quiet, with no immediate threats. Yet, Madden-Julian Oscillation, MJO, phases suggest that from September 18 to 22, conditions across this region will become more favorable for tropical development. This could set the stage for new systems near Jamaica, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Any such development would likely bring torrential rains, raising the risk of flash flooding, heavy rain and flooding threats. Several areas are already dealing with excessive rainfall. South Florida, torrential downpours are forecast to drop 4 to 6 inches, 100–150 millimeters, over just a few days, flooding streets in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and surrounding areas. Rockies and Southwest U.S., from New Mexico through Colorado, rainfall totals may reach 3 to 5 inches, 75 to 125 millimeters, raising the risk of flash flooding and landslides in mountainous terrain. Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and Jamaica could see widespread rainfall amounts of 4 to 8 inches, 100–200 millimeters, creating serious flood hazards, particularly in steep valleys and poorly drained urban areas. Long-term outlook. Looking further ahead, late September into early October will bring stronger jet stream activity, a clear sign that the autumn to winter transition is approaching. As the jet dips southward, sharp cold fronts may develop, allowing early-season cold air masses to surge into the northern U.S. high-elevation areas of the Rockies, and the High Plains could even see their first snowflakes of the season. Additionally, a more volatile jet stream means the secondary severe weather season, typically in October, could emerge, with new rounds of dangerous storms across the central and southeastern United States. Summary and closing. In summary, the U.S. faces a complex weather setup in the coming days. A dangerous and prolonged heat wave across the Midwest and Great Lakes. Severe thunderstorms with hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes across the Central Plains. Heavy rain in the west, raising flood and wildfire concerns. The Atlantic awakening, with Tropical Storm Gabrielle likely to form soon. Flooding rains across Florida, the Caribbean, and the Southwest. And, in the long range, early season cold outbreaks and a heightened risk of October severe weather. Residents are urged to follow official forecasts closely, take heat and storm warnings seriously, and prepare for rapid weather changes. Limit outdoor activity during peak heat hours. Heed coastal advisories for dangerous surf, and be alert to flash flooding risks in mountain and island communities. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our 7 to 10 day outlook across the United States and the Atlantic Basin. If you found this report helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming updates. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next weather news bulletin.